books, it's me Michaela and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm starting another reading vlog and this one is going to be specifically to just one book. That book is going to be The Poppy War by R F Kuang. I'm so excited to finally get to reading this. If you've seen some of my other videos, you may know that I've been really wanting to read this. It's one of my 23 books in 2023. I'm very excited to read it, and the only reason I haven't has been because I told myself I had to get some of my currently reading series down before I started a new fantasy series. So since I accomplished those little goals I set for myself, this was my reward read for doing that, and I reached those goals, so now I get to read it and I'm so happy. I'm gonna be studying this today and I'm gonna be letting you know my thoughts throughout. So yeah, just like a little short, sweet, quick intro. Let's just get into reading, shall we? I'll see you once I've read some of this book. I'm so excited. Okay, bye. Hello. I'm here for an update because I've read about 150 pages of The Poppy War, and also because the intro I made for this is kind of really bad and doesn't tell you anything, because I was just really excited to start reading the book. So oops, my bad. But yeah, I'm now about 160 pages in. So we're following Rin. She's a war orphan, and there were so many orphans from I think it's the second Poppy War, that the government of Nicara forced people who didn't have 3 children already to adopt children. So she ended up in this kind of abusive family situation because these people were forced to adopt her and didn't want her. And so she's 14 at the beginning of the book and finds out that they're going to basically marry her off to this extremely old guy so that they can get more privileges for smuggling, because they deal opium and drugs and stuff. And naturally Rin isn't really too pleased about that. She does not want this to happen, and the only way she can get out of this situation is by getting a really good score on the Keiju, which is a really intense entrance exam to possibly be selected to get into these academies throughout the country. She's already at this disadvantage because she's from a very poor area of the country, and most people have been studying their whole lives for this, and she only has 2 years to study for it. So she ends up studying insanely hard and gets a really good grade and gets into the highest, most prestigious academy of Sinigard. So then you follow her to the academy, where you kind of come to learn that there are a lot of political things happening, and there's also a lot of systemic issues in place that prevent people, even like her, these peasants, from moving up in the world. It's all set up in a way where it looks like anybody can score amazing on this test and get into these academies and becomes a military general and be amazing. But that's not really the reality of it. So there's a lot of history and politics and things in it. So it's really interesting so far. I'm really intrigued. And the way that this first year at the academy is playing out for her is very interesting. I sometimes am a little weary when things... I didn't turn my heater off. I really love reading fantasy school settings, but I find that sometimes they're not amazing. I like it when they're interesting. This one, it's a lot of plot is intertwined with the actual schooling. Sometimes the school can just be a setting, and it feels we're just here to say we're at some kind of fantasy school, and not necessarily because of the plot. I don't know if that makes sense. Sometimes the plot is purely about all of the things that's happening to the character outside of going to school, and they just happen to be at school during it. But this is the school is very connected to the plot and how things are progressing, and I'm really liking that. This is also I believe there's 3 parts to this, so I'm still in part 1. I'm actually only at chapter 8. It has quite long chapters, but they do have a lot of smaller scene breaks in them, and they also read very quickly despite them being so long. Only being on chapter 8 and being 100 and 60 pages in is kind of like strange, especially for me. I usually don't like reading longer chapter things, but I'm really enjoying this. I find it's a really like consumable read, but not in the way that it's like, oh, it's so easy and simple and blah. It's just like, it's really captivating and I'm liking it. So yeah, we shall continue on. See you at the next update. Hello. I'm sorry if the lighting is a little weird. I kind of had to do some kind of makeshift stuff because I got distracted by reading and now the sun is setting, so there is no natural light to use for filming and I'm upset about it. You're welcome for that beautiful rendition. But I have read more of the Poppy War. What is happening? Okay, the book this way. I'm about 2/3 of the way through now. I'm partially through part 2. I guess I'm close to being done with part 2. Actually, I didn't realize I read so much. I am about 320 pages into it, let's say around there. And I'm still really enjoying it. One correction I have from my previous update is that I think I was saying how the country is called Nikara, but that's like incorrect. The country is called Nikan, and Nikara is like the adjective. You know, like Canada, Canadian, Nikon, Nikara. Just got that confused in my brain. And speaking of like being confused, the one thing I do find I'm having trouble with this book is that Kuang tends to have portions where you get like a lot of new character names like thrown at you at once, and it's kind of hard to align them all, and I'm finding it like very easy to lose track of who's who. And I do like learn them and like with a, you know, you catch on, but it does feel like a little overwhelming at first. It happened like at the beginning of the book, and now I'm at a section where there's like more characters being introduced, and it kind of like happened again where I was like, whoa. Is this partially to do maybe because I'm just very white and I'm not accustomed to non-white people names? Yes, that it's probably very likely it might be just like my own non-life exposure to non-European based names. Does that make sense? That might be like part of the issue. So I'm not gonna like totally fault R F Kuang for that, but it is an experience I had. I am at a part now in the book where the magic system has been revealed, which I actually really liked. It kind of was like very like slowly you learn about it, like it's unraveled for you in a way that's really interesting, and it's just like built upon the more of the book you read. And I really like that as an aspect because it makes it like really easy to grasp an understanding of the magic system. And I also like how it's very fluid. It has like a strict way it works, but everything like within it is very like malleable in a way that makes sense. I've really enjoyed the way the magic system works. Also, war has started, saying the war and the magic. Neither of those things are spoilers, as this is a fantasy book that's called The Poppy War. Yeah, war is upon us. And I'm liking the way it's depicted. It feels like a very realistic and informed way of talking about war. It's still very much at the beginning of war. I wouldn't say like, you know, like it's full-fledged, we're in the middle of war-torn chaos, but you're beginning to see the impacts of it, and all of the like battle scenes aren't depicted in a way of just like badass fighting, beat up. There's a lot oh my god, what's up with my voice? Okay, there's a lot of acknowledgement of the humanity on the other side of the fight, which I found very what's the right word? Like, touching isn't the right word, but like it hits you with the reality of the scene you're reading, and not just from the like side you're on that sometimes you tend to get in fantasy. So it's like a nice awakening to have like in the book, the just like the brutality of it all. I do also know that the storyline, the plot of this whole series, I believe in general, is based off of Chinese history. I embarrassingly am not educated enough in Chinese history or anything outside of European history, honestly. I should probably better myself with that knowledge at some point. So to me, I don't get to really fully appreciate maybe the commentary that Kuang is making on this history, or the changes that she's making, like what aspects she's using as the bones of her own story to comment on possible injustices or elements. I'm dreadfully unaware of what possibly might be being said in that manner, as I am uneducated in that area. However, I do say I'm still able to pick up on some of the talk on the classism and the systemic issues and the politics are all very like well conceived and well portrayed in the, not necessarily they're all positive, but well portrayed in a way that they're easily understood and comprehended of the authorial intent behind how it's being presented, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm talking very like smart Michaela. Like I put my little like educated hat on. I say as I talk about being uneducated. But yeah, I would say like I'm really enjoying the book. I've been speeding through it. Like I said, I have found it extremely easily consumable. The story is keeping me very intrigued. It's very easy to continue to want to pick it up and to continue reading, despite the fact that like chapters are quite long. A lot of them are easily like 20 pages. I think the shortest one I read was like a 14-page chapter. And for me, usually that makes it so that I read books much slower than a book that has more chapters. Usually I find them to have like slower pacing, but the pacing in this is still very fast. And I think the way that you're constantly learning more about like the world and the country and the politics and the magic are keeping me very like enthralled with the story and keeping me reading. And I'm really enjoying that. I'm so excited. And I'm so happy that I picked up this book and I liked it, because oh my god, I've been like waiting to read it and like so excited to read it for so long that I was like mildly terrified that I was like not gonna like it and then I'd be like so hugely disappointed. But I'm very much not. I would say I'm gonna be rating this at least a 4. I really do not envision this coming to a point where like the writing in it is going to give me like a rating of anything below a 4-star. Is it going to be a 5-star read? I'm not quite sure. That really is dependent on like the last third of the book, but especially knowing that this is a debut novel as well, I think it's just wonderfully executed by Kuang. And the ability to read a story that's not based in like European history is really great, and I'm really happy to be like broadening my horizons in that manner. It's nice to have like the change of pace of getting to read a fantasy based in a different culture than, you know, like the European medieval Viking whatever kind of stuff that I do read and I do enjoy. But you know what, it's always great to have more, and I think the more diversity we have in fantasy, the better. So I guess that's what I'm gonna say for the update. And then I will say, like, at the beginning of part 2, this is totally just like a one-off thing, but there was like one chapter, maybe not even a full chapter, it was like part of a chapter that was like randomly from a different point of view than Rin. And there hasn't been any other chapters or any parts of the book from another perspective, so I just found that like a little off. I understand that it was like probably the only way to get that part of the story into the plot, and it was like a necessary aspect to have to understand a bit politically what's going on. But it did feel a little strange to like all of a sudden be reading a different point of view than what you've been reading for the entire book, and then to also never go back to that point of view or go to a different point of view. It just felt like a little not unstable. I felt a little funny about it. I was like, ooh, what's going on here? I'm confused. And then I like caught on and I was like, oh. And I was like, wait, just that? Like, it's not over? We're not going back anymore? Okay, that we're done there? Like, that was it? Okay. So, you know, like, that's all I have to say. That's like, I have like 2 qualms. That and there's too many characters all thrown at me at once. But I'm really enjoying the characters. I'm really enjoying the story. I'm really enjoying the world. I'm really enjoying the magic. I'm enjoying it all, baby. And I'm now gonna go and enjoy it some more, and I'll talk to you probably when I'm done the book, okay? Bye. Why am I so freaking weird? Hi. Look, I found a way to film in front of my bookcase for once, and it's like to make it so it's like over like the 2 shelves that look good on it. If you saw my bookshelf tour, you know that most of it doesn't look cute, but that is just like an extra little tangent that we just went on because I finished reading The Poppy War and I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I really loved the story, but I did feel like a few of the elements that I kind of was discussing earlier in like some of my other check-ins kind of did affect how I felt like overall with the book. I didn't feel like I could quite give it a 5-star when there were parts where I was confused over like characters and their names and who was who and feeling a little overwhelmed with that, and then like a few portions where I was a little confused about perspective as well, and just like kind of like also like overall it just didn't give me quite the like 5-star vibes. But I did love it so much that before I even finished it, I did in fact order the next book because I was like, well, one, because it was partially on sale, so when I went to go check, it felt like a sign that I was like meant to get it, despite me being on a like $0 book budget. But I was like, you know what, I haven't bought a single book yet this year and it's almost April, like I feel like I deserve this. And I was reading the last few chapters of The Poppy War and I was like, I just need to know what happens next, and there's no way that I can finish reading this book and just like put it away and then like not have the next book to read. It's not gonna be like obviously the next book I read because it won't be at my local Indigo until sometime next week, so it's not like I can read the next one immediately, but I do want to continue on with this series very, very soon after having finished The Poppy Wars. Yeah, 4.5 stars, a very solid book, especially like considering it being R F Kuang's debut novel makes it that much more impressive to me. I really enjoyed it. I felt like the last part of the book that I read kind of had a bit of a foreshadowed twist. I feel like a lot of the events that happen in the book actually are very well foreshadowed or like hinted at. You kind of like, if you're paying attention, I don't think they're always that like subtle, don't get me wrong. It's not like, oh, you have to be extremely close reading it or you won't see what's happening. I think like as long as you're not like speeding through reading it, like if you're reading it and paying attention in general to things that are happening, you can kind of see what's being lined up fairly easily, but not in a like, oh, it's so predictable way. But it's just nice to see like the droplets of where the story is going to lead. Like, you know that this one bit must be coming up, but you don't quite know how or where. And those kind of things I really found intriguing. I also like, it gave it like a little bit of that like suspense. Suspense isn't quite the right word because it wasn't like, oh my god, but it was just like a little bit, you're like, how is this going to come up? What's gonna happen because of this implication that I just read? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I really enjoyed it. I felt like the end was tragic, and the fact that you're reading from very like morally gray characters, like everyone is, because of just the realities of war, that people are forced or they have to like remove themselves in a way from their humanity to make these devastating and traumatic and maddening choices in order to win at war. And sometimes that means committing atrocities. And sometimes when the person you're fighting is committing atrocities on you, it can make you feel justified to do those same things, and then you're forced to live with those facts. It's like, how far can like an eye for an eye go? And should everybody have to suffer in that way just because other people say? It's just like it creates a lot of thought-provoking narratives for me, just because you want to say, yes, as this victim you deserve justice, but what does that look like, and is there a line, and should that line be crossed? And just because maybe it can feel justified doesn't mean that it should be done. And yeah, it was just like a lot. Some of the scenes that you're reading are very grotesque. They can be very disturbing. Definitely like don't go into this book thinking that you're reading like a YA fantasy novel just because the protagonist in it is a teenager. That is not the case. That is not reality. This is definitely an adult novel, and it is a heavy adult novel at that. This is a political war fantasy novel, and all the realities and the brutality that comes with that is present in the story. So I just feel like everybody should definitely be aware of that. I kind of knew that going into this. I was expecting this to be like a very heavy, very dark book. Like, I walked into this knowingly. I chose this for myself. So yeah, that was like my reading experience with The Poppy War. I think it's a really good novel. I'm really wanting to dive into the next portion of the story and see how the events of like the first book fall into the next book, just because it's going to be like a completely different premise for the plot. It's not going to be like connected in the way that like this story didn't finish. It's more so that this story left the beginnings of the next story, kind of, more so than it being like the continuous story. Like, this did feel very much like a breaking point that would lead to like the next chapter, like the next novel of the story that you're following. I feel like at this point I'm just saying I'm sorry, it's like the morning. I like woke up like 10 minutes ago and like slapped some makeup on, so I don't really think I'm being fully coherent. But I read The Poppy War by R F Kuang. Finally, after waiting forever, I read my reward book for myself for achieving my goals. Congrats, Michaela. Good job on you. And I really enjoyed it. And I hope that, you know, watching this will give you an idea maybe of if reading The Poppy War is for you, if it's something you're interested in, or if maybe it's something that you should stay away from, you know, whatever. I hope it gave you some kind of insight, maybe. But yeah, there we go. If you liked the video, make sure to give it a like. Comment down below if you read The Poppy War. Let me know your thoughts on it. Also, if you happen to like me, consider subscribing. Stick around. I'll be happy to have you. And you know, like with that, that's all of the video I have for you today. So until the next one, I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Bye-bye.